I would like to introduce our second speaker for this afternoon. He is the Bishop Francis Allen. He's the head of the Roman Catholic Church in Guyana. And we thought it very important to have the bishop here this evening as we remember Zenita and also as we continue the conversation about human rights in Guyana. The bishop has been very vocal about human rights, and he's known of Zenita's passion and connection to the work.
Good afternoon to all. And first of all, I'd like to thank Joel for the invitation to join you at the closing of your program, and also to acknowledge the involvement and support behind the program from the European Union and SASAD. I'd like to acknowledge the persons, you, who have signed up to participate in the training. You know, you're stepping forward and availing yourself, to increase your own capacity to give voice. And that's advocacy, to help articulate things, particularly for vulnerable groups in Guyana. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 25, of course, when you see a pastor behind a microphone, and it may look as if I'm going to start to preach. But I just want to allude to that little well-known story in the Matthew 25, because I think it's well-known. But in that little story, it tells us of a group that was singled out because they fed the hungry, they gave drink, they visited the sick and imprisoned, they clothed the naked, they gave refuge and hospitality to the stranger. They responded to the needs of vulnerable groups. And this text is not simply about setting up feeding programs or visiting inmates in their Camp Street lockups or giving out clothes that come in a barrel from the US or going to the public hospital to visit patients. I mean, all those things are commendable in themselves. But whenever we, just have these stories to help us think further, and then we look again and we see around us the evidence of violence and corruption and exploitation, child abuse, human trafficking, addiction and compulsive behavior, then we are looking at people in prison. The perpetrators are in prison, and the victims are in prison. And we need the voices to articulate this and to open those prison doors. In recent years, I have heard several reports from all corners of Guyana about mass hysteria. Perhaps you're aware of this. They often were reported in the papers as some strange phenomenon, strange behavior, always and only affecting young women in their teens, where literally they were showing and exhibiting this hysterical behavior. What it is, when it's analyzed, is a cry for help. It is an acting out of a deep desire to be acknowledged, to be respected, to be given a place in community. These are young women who are starving, and they need nourishment, not in the literal sense of food or diet or vitamins and so on, but they need the nourishment in their hearts and being, to know that they are valued, to know that places will be provided for them, safe places where they can develop in a wholesome manner, where they can discover their gifts and offer those gifts in service to others. Interestingly, as this was looked at, what was said to me is that whilst the teenage girl reacts and responds to this vulnerability in this way, where we look for it very often in young men is in suicide. These are our brothers and sisters who are naked and in need of clothing, They are being threatened and overwhelmed by the elements around them. And so give them something to protect them from these harsh elements. And as I talk about suicide, we just remembered our sister Zenita. Suicide tells us that a person has been pushed into a corner that is extremely lonely and desperate. But for the grace of God, there go I. And that could have been any one of us. Zenita, as I remember her, radiated with a disposition that created non-threatening space. I have fond memories of chatting at length with her and feeling comfortable to say to her, I am struggling with my own hang-ups, my own prejudices, my limitations, my preconceived ideas. I know I need to challenge them. Our conversations were, for the most part, about the vulnerability of the LBGT community. Zenita did her research. She had data at her fingertips. She knew the statistics and was a great help to me in widening my picture of life. She was on the ground, near to some of the harsh realities that touch into people's lives. Certainly, in many cases, nearer than I was. In one of our last conversations, she offered to take me to see the places where people suffer, places to which people are relegated because there is no room for them, either in the systems, in the public policies, or in the minds and hearts of others. Zenita was articulate, had an ability, as it were, to market the issues, make them known, put them into words that were more palatable, and in that way, to bring more people into the conversation. So I will miss her, and I will miss those moments. But today we are, or more particularly you are, marking the completion of your workshops in advocacy. Your training and formation must go on. And I hope that you continue to seek the ways to take up the mantle that we saw so well carried by Zenita, and we still see lovely examples of others carrying that mantle, carrying that baton, giving, and giving voice. What you have done is not only about increasing your own capacity, but through you to give increase to the wider society. Society at large needs more people who believe in the art of the possible. I noted that as one of the titles of one of your sessions, the art of the possible. We need people who can look at life in that way, believe that things are possible. We need people on the ground and more people who are disposed to ask, to listen, and to learn. More people in the language of respect and integrity and sacredness of life. I long for the day when it becomes norm and natural for people to talk in terms of collaboration, teamwork, of trust, of forgiveness, of compassion, of service, and sacrifice. In the story I referred to from the Gospel of Matthew, in that story, when the king commends the group for their outreach to the vulnerable, their response was, when did we do this? When did we do these things? You know, it was for them very natural and the normal thing to do, and nothing exceptional. And I believe that the nearer we get to that stature of life, where the outreach to others just becomes natural, when we just see them only in terms of their goodness and integrity and potential, you know, that's when we get closer to that stature, I believe we will see fewer of our brothers and sisters overlooked or judged or rejected, ignored or displaced. So congratulations to you on the completion of your training. You are few in the face of many challenges, but give the issues voice and be beacons of hope, especially to the vulnerable in Guyana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bishop, for your kind and inspiring words and passionate charge to us all as we continue our work in advocacy.